Hello, you're watching Channel 1, where in this video I'm going to be doing an oil and filter change on the Citroen Peugeot Group 1.6 HDI engine, and this one in particular is fitted to a C4 Grand Picasso. Well, the first thing you need to do is have your oil and filter at hand. I bought this complete service kit because I'm doing all the major bits on this car. It's been about 10,000 miles at least since anything else was done on it. And here you can see the complete kit here after it's arrived, but yes, you may just need the oil and filter for this job. To complete this task, you're going to need a few tools. As you can see here, not too many. A bowl to start with to catch the oil from the engine. I'd recommend a 21mm socket to undo the sump plug, a 27mm socket to undo the oil filter housing, a ratchet to operate those sockets, a torque wrench as well to do them up to the correct poundage, and a screwdriver, or you can get a bit of toilet roll, which you're going to need to release the oil filter from the housing. So here we have the car I'll be working on. As I say, it is a Citroen C4 Grand Picasso, although the 1.6 HDI engine that's fitted in here also goes in a whole bunch of Peugeots, obviously other Citroens. I've been told it's in Fords and some Volvos as well, so it's quite a common engine to be dealing with. Before you drain the oil, you need to make sure it's up to temperature realistically, so it is nice and thin and it's picked up any little bits of debris it's got around it. So I've taken this car out for about half an hour's drive or so. Not particularly vigorously, just normal driving, and as you can see here I've got 68.5 degrees reading on the sump, so it's fairly warm to be honest. So looking from the front of the car, on the left of middle a little bit, you'll see the sump. I've circled here the drain plug you need to get to, and I've just got a little close-up of it here. That's what you're looking for to drain the oil at the bottom of the engine. With the sump bolt being recessed, ideally you need a socket on there to undo it, and this is where you use the 21mm socket on there. I kind of feel that with the sump bolt where it is, there's going to be some oil left in the pan, so you're never going to get a full clean engine changing the oil, but it is where it is. And with that bolt undone, just drain it off into a suitable size container. I've got a washing bowl under here, which you'll see in a second, it nearly fills. And while we generally think oil as being black, fresh clean oil that you put in your engine isn't. It's a kind of golden colour, so you can tell that this has had a few miles on it and it's time to change. Now, I haven't got the sump bolt back in yet. I am letting as much drain out as possible, but the arrow here marks the rough location of the oil filter. And you can hear my boy VD in the background there, I expect. And here's a slightly better picture of it, hidden away beneath the air inlet pipes and the coolant pipe. And we've got a little zoomed in shot here that you might just about to see the nut on top of the filter housing, which you need to undo. Right, and to make this all possible, you kind of want to get this one air tube out the way, which is simply disconnecting it where I've circled here and folding the front part up and out the way. And with that pipe out the way, you get a better look at the air filter housing, and that nut on top is 27mm. But if you can hear me over the boy, I don't want a load of oil dripping all over my engine. It's bad enough as it is, so I've just laid a little cloth out under here, as you can see, to catch any that is going to run out of the filter housing as it is undone. And then using the 27mm socket, it's literally simply a matter of undoing the housing. It's a fairly long thread, you know, it took a bit longer than I thought to undo. And in this picture here, you can just see how much it ends up unwinding. And here we have the oil filter housing and the oil filter. And in this picture I have the filter actually removed from inside the housing. Now here we have the oil filter housing, which I have just sprayed clean with some brake cleaner, because you're putting fresh oil in there, so you want to contaminate that with as little old oil as possible. And this is what makes the whole job a bit of a pain, to be honest. Out of everything you do here, this was the worst bit I had to deal with. Those little prongs clip on the inside of the actual oil filter and can be a little bit of a mare to depress them all to be able to get the filter out. I just ran kind of a couple of screwdrivers down and just teased them all until the filter come loose, but wouldn't a bit of pipe down there might be able to get them all a little bit easier. Then you should always replace this O-ring on the outside of the oil filter housing, just in case it's got any nicks in it and is going to allow anything to leak past. And any good filter supplied will come with one of those replacement O-rings. Here I just have a little picture showing it being released and rolling it up off the thread. This is the new O-ring that's going to go on. You can just about see the old one underneath the filter housing there on the floor. And this is that O-ring seated in the correct groove on the oil filter housing. Next we actually get onto the oil filter itself, which you will notice has this little raised prong on it in one point with a small O-ring around it, which needs to mate into this circled hole on the oil filter location part of the engine block. And you'll note I've just cleaned up inside of this oil filter receptacle on the engine block just by using a rag. I didn't want to use any brake cleaner in there and risk contaminating anything inside the engine. And all you have to do is get that prong into the hole on the engine block and push it down as far as you can. You might not get it all the way in, but the housing, when you fit that on afterwards, will accomplish that. In this photo I have got the oil filter housing now over the top of the filter, and I've just threaded it down by hand as far as I can go, and then I finish off by using a socket, the 27mm socket on a ratchet, getting it fairly tight. And because this is a plastic oil filter housing and you need it tight so it doesn't leak, but not so tight that it cracks, I suggest you use a torque wrench to do the final tightening, and it's needed to be done up to 25 Newton meters. Then you may remember I had left the oil draining off into that washing up bowl I had left under the car, and I'd like to state I didn't need to jack the car up for this. I could reach underneath and do it without having to raise the car. And there's more oil in there than I actually anticipated, to be honest, but that's how much was in, so that's how much had to come out. Then one of the reasons why I picked the service kit that I did is because it comes with a new sump bolt and sealing washer. Not all of them do. You may be someone who doesn't care about replacing them, but if you've got the option to, it's always best to. Now, with all that drained out, I screw in the sump plug by hand initially, then grab my torque wrench, set that to 35 Newton meters this time, and just finish off tightening up the bolt in the sump. Very important you don't think you're finished there, because you need to put your fresh oil in. I have heard of people not doing that, and I've also heard of people not draining the oil out and putting a new lot in on top, neither of which are very good situations for the engine. So locating the oil filler cap, you just want to unscrew that and get it out of the way somewhere safe. And because I'm old and shaky, I put a funnel in the oil filler hole just so I don't spill too much all over the place. And I know this engine takes around 4 litres, so I pour in 3 and a bit litres, and then just check on the dipstick. You're much better off using the dipstick as a guide to how much oil's in the engine than just going on a quantity that the book says and pouring that in. It's just much safer that way. And seeing there was nowhere near enough before, I've added a slug more oil here, which is fairly close to the maximum now. So I install the oil filler cap and go and start the engine just to get that oil flowing all around the engine, up into the rockers, and just make sure it is all where it needs to be. Then I go and check the dipstick again, and quite clearly you can see the oil level has dropped a little bit, so it's time to fill it up that little bit more. You'll also note that despite me putting an engine flush through this before I took it on its drive to warm up, it still looks a little bit black. You can in the light see that the oil is fairly clean, but it doesn't show that on the dipstick. You don't need much diesel engine oil left in the car for it to contaminate the whole lot and make it look terrible. But I assure you, as you've seen, this is fresh oil that's in there. And as you can see here, there is, about 4 litres of oil gone in there. Put in as much as you need. Like I say, they do take less than the 5 litres, so 1 can of oil is enough. That's why this service kit provided specifically for this engine only provided the 1 5-litre container of oil. And that really is pretty much job done. Fit the oil filler cap back on top of the engine if you haven't already done so, and just take it out for a drive. I'm going to check my oil level in a day or so just to see where it's at, just to make sure I've got the right quantity in there when it's all warm and running around. But other than this next very critical part of dispose of your oil properly, folks, I've got a large can that I keep it in and take it down to the local waste disposal place. But when you've done that, you are finished. And now I feel I should say that I am not sponsored by the provider of this service kit. I bought it with my own money. They didn't even know I was going to do a video. I wouldn't say endorsing it, but the whole kit is perfectly up to the job, and I think of reasonable value for everything that you receive. But yes, it was my money it's bought with, and if this video has been of any help to you, do please hit the like button, please subscribe to the channel. I'm always uploading new bits and bobs as I'm keeping myself busy. But whether you do or you don't, folks, do please stay safe, everybody. Take care. Peace.